something is moving through our solar system, and it isn't playing by the rules. If you want the calm, honest version of this story as it really stands, hit subscribe now and settle in. This one starts quiet, then gets stranger the longer you listen. Here's what we know without the drama. An object from far outside our solar system slid in almost perfectly along the same flat lane our planets use the ecliptic off by only about 5 degrees. That alone is odd. Interstellar visitors usually dive in from random angles, like pebbles tossed at a pond. This one arrived as if it already knew the track. It's fast. Early on, it clocked around 58 kilometers per second. Near closest approach to the sun perihelion, it climbs toward roughly 68. That's enough speed to cross a continent before you finish a cup of tea. Speed isn't rare by itself, but speed plus precision plus what came next made astronomers lean closer to their screens. At first, the glow was a deep red, the kind of weathering we often see on bodies that live in harsh radiation for ages. Then it shifted green. Normally, green in a comet's haze, the coma points to certain molecules being excited by sunlight. But this coma didn't follow the usual recipe. Spectra leaned heavy on carbon dioxide rather than water. The metal lines were strange too, nickel showing up stronger than iron. That's upside down compared to most natural stuff we measure. Add one more curveball. The light it reflected showed an extreme negative polarization. The most offbeat curve ever recorded for a body like this. That suggests the dust around it isn't fluffy and random. It acts like something far finer and more structured, almost like engineered foam rather than simple frost. Then came the part that made quiet people speak up. Everyone learns the same first rule about comets. The tail points away from the sun, pushed by solar wind. This one showed a narrow forward feature pointing sunward, more headlight than tail. You can call it a jet, a beam, a plume. Whatever the label, it's not how nature usually behaves. That doesn't mean craft. It does mean pay attention. Scale matters. Based on what we have, the solid heart of this thing could be 5 kilometers wide or 10 times that. Even the small end of that range is a city-sized mountain, big enough to feed a coma for months and tough enough to survive its own venting. We've watched comets rocket bright and tear themselves apart under their own pressure. This one held together. That tells you the interior isn't a loose snowball, it's dense, strong, something that can take a beating and keep shape. Now for the timing. There's a window when the sun sits directly between us and the object. It's called superior conjunction, and it's the worst possible moment for curiosity because the sun's glare drowns everything. Around that same stretch, the moon moves through the system's electric environment and subtle geomagnetic effects often tick upward. Nothing dramatic, just a +1 in the background. Mix that with a freshly charged magnetosphere after long storming, and you get a tense, humming canvas. Not fireworks tension. The system is full of charge, and a weird visitor is drifting through the thickest part of the solar electric field. Closest approach to the sun lands near 11:55 UTC on October 29. That's the most energy it will feel, the most change it might do, and we won't see it in real time. That's the part nobody loves. The telescopes go blind in the glare right when it could be most interesting. We only get the before, then later we get the after. If it pops brighter, we'll argue why. If it dims, we'll argue how. If the green deepens, we'll chase new chemistry. If nothing obvious changes, we'll comb polarization and spectra for quiet clues we can only see by stacking frames and breathing slowly. While it's hidden, the smartest move is to watch the system it swims through. The solar wind spirals along the ecliptic. Planets act like electrical nodes. Dust grains charge up. Ions stream. Space is not empty. It's threaded with fields. A body with this mixed CO2, rich coma, odd metal balance, extreme negative polarization, sun-facing jet acts like a switch dropped into that circuit. Maybe the effect is tiny. Maybe it only shows up as unusual auroras where we don't expect them. Little dips in radio noise, odd plasma ripples that we feel only on plots. But if something whispers, the whisper will fall into the data around late October and early November. Not predictions, patterns. There's also the practical piece almost no one headlines. Brightness. Planets near the sun can peek out in coronagraph images because they're big and bright. This object's apparent magnitude was around 12 heading into the glare dim compared to planets, and the core is a speck compared to Mercury or Venus. Unless it brightened by several big leaps, it simply won't show in those instruments. So yes, the blackout is real. That's not a cover story. That's optics. Let's fold the timeline neatly. Far out, it flared earlier than normal. It reddened, then greened. Its light said, my dust isn't ordinary. Its metal said, my furnace wasn't your furnace. Its path said, I've memorized your map. It showed a jet that pointed toward the Sunday. Then it slipped behind the glare right as the system's electric mood grew louder. The next clean look likely arrives mid to late November, once it's far enough from the sun's face for our detectors to stop squinting. What happens in between? 3 honest options. 1. Nothing you can see with the naked eye. Yet the subtle stuff shifts polarization, grain size, faint chemistry. 2. Visible changes brighter coma, new structures, jet behavior that rotates or thins. 3. The rarest option path deviations that don't fit the thermal jet math. That last one is where people start whispering words like control and propulsion. It's okay to hold that thought in a separate box. It's not okay to staple it to reality before the numbers arrive. Stay simple and stay awake. Fast inbound near 58. Faster at perihelion near 68. Alignment within about 5 degrees of the ecliptic. Likely nucleus somewhere between 5 and 50 kilometers wide. Coma dominated by carbon dioxide rather than water. Nickel showing stronger than iron. Most extreme negative polarization curve on record. A thin sunward feature that refuses to act like a tail. Closest approach to the sun near 11:55 UTC on October 29. Blind period through late October because of the sun's glare. First good post-glare checks likely mid to late November. If you're listening in bed, Picture it simply. A dark core wrapped in a soft green haze, sliding almost exactly along the planet's lane, letting out a tight forward ray like a lighthouse beam pointed the wrong way. The sun steps between us and the scene, and the screen goes white. Somewhere on Earth, a scientist leans back, folds their arms, and waits for the first clean plot to reappear. Here's the calm truth no one hates to hear. You don't need to label it tonight. You just need to remember that the sky is allowed to surprise us. The moment it reappears, we'll measure instead of guess. If the numbers teach a new rule, we'll learn it. If they echo an old rule in a new key, we'll learn that too. If you want the first clear breakdown the moment it comes back out of the glare, subscribe and turn on the bell. When the data lands, I'll be here with a gentle, no-hype readout you can fall asleep to and wake up a little smarter. While the world stares into that bright patch of sky and sees nothing, there's still a lot we can learn in the quiet. Think of this as listening through a wall. You can't see the room next door, but you can hear the pipes hum, feel the floorboards vibrate, catch the rise and fall of voices. Space works like that. When something unusual moves through the sun's electric field, the system answers in small ways. Ion streams shift. Radiostatic gets a rhythm. The upper atmosphere paints quick. Faint curtains of light in places that don't usually glow. None of those alone prove anything. But together they tell you which way to look when the glare finally lets go. Let's slow down with one of the strangest clues. That extreme negative polarization. In plain language, polarized light is just sunlight that got a little organized after bouncing off dust. Most comets give you curves we know well. The curve from this object dives farther than anything on the books. That means the grains in its haze aren't acting like soft snow or ash. They behave like ultra-fine, highly porous, possibly layered stuff. Think aerogel more than freezer frost. Nature can make weird foams. It doesn't need help. But if you were building a surface to survive wild temperature swings and still shed gas in a controlled way, you might design something that looks, to our instruments, a lot like this. Now the chemistry. A coma heavy in carbon dioxide with low, sometimes stubbornly low, water is not the standard recipe for homegrown comet. Add that nickel over iron quirk and you've got a fingerprint that doesn't match most of the family photo. Could a body form in a very cold, dry zone around another star where CO2 locks in deep and water never dominates? Yes. Could space weather over eons pull out metals in lopsided ways? Also yes. Or this is the thought people whisper late at night. Could you get those signatures if the surface has been heat-treated, sintered, plated, or otherwise changed by processes we don't normally put in the comet box? That's the box no one wants to touch until the data leaves them no choice. Then there's the lane it chose. Skimming the ecliptic isn't impossible for a visitor. Just rare. The odds aren't zero, they're small. But small odds still show up if you watch the sky long enough. What makes it interesting is how the lane, the chemistry, the polarization, the forward feature, and the sheer size stack up. Any one of those would raise an eyebrow. All of them together makes you sit forward. While it hides, here's what the patient people are watching. Light curve. It's the object's brightness plotted over time. If it pops brighter than the fit we expected by whole steps, not tiny wiggles, that's a flag. It can mean new vents opened, grains got smaller, or geometry lined up just right to bounce more light our way. If it dims below the track and stays there, it could mean the grains grew, the outgassing calmed, or dust clumped into bigger, duller pieces. Either way, the shape of that curve is a diary. Phase angle effects, that's the sun object Earth geometry. Some materials surge in brightness when they are backlit at just the right angle a surge we can model. If this thing's surge is too big or weird, it tells us the dust is doing tricks we don't usually see. Color slope. Strip the glow into bands and you get a color fingerprint. If the green band deepens while others stay flat, we'll talk about CO2 chemistry again. If the reds creep back, we'll ask whether radiation is baking the small grains away. Polarization again. When it reappears, we'll take another full curve. If that deep negative stays deep, the dust stayed fine and structured. If it relaxes, something in the coma changed grain sizes, porosity, coatings, non-gravitational acceleration. The big one with the smallest numbers. When outgassing jets push a body, its path shifts by tiny amounts we can measure if the tracking is clean. If those tiny pushes line up with the forward feature and don't match the usual heating pattern, we'll say so. If the path stays boringly perfect, that's a result too. And while eyes are on the visitor, ears are on the Sun-Earth line. The magnetometers will keep humming. HF radio watchers will report sudden quiet patches or strange flutter, then argue about whether it was just a solar hiccup. Auroral cameras far from the poles will catch a faint sweep now and then and ask, "Was that you?" It's not proof of anything dramatic, just stitches in the same quilt. There's a softer layer to all this that's worth saying out loud. Humans want clean labels. Comet, asteroid, probe, threat. We like drawers where things belong. Space doesn't owe us drawers. Sometimes it gives you something with a little of column A, a dash of column B, and a behavior no one has written down yet. If this visitor turns out to be a natural body with quirks we haven't seen, that's not a letdown. That's a new page in a field guide we pretend has no blank pages. If it writes a rule we never knew to teach, all of us get smarter. Picture the weeks ahead like the slow part of a tide. We are at the still point near slack water, when the current pauses and the harbour goes quiet. Perihelion is the turn. After the turn, the current returns, gentle at first, then stronger. The first thin measurements will arrive like ripples on a dock post, barely there. Then the ripples will line up and make a pattern. We'll lay that pattern over the last one, and another story thread will either tighten or fray. If you need a simple image to carry to sleep, take this. A dark, hard seed wrapped in a green lantern, gliding the same flat path our worlds share. At its nose, a tight, pale streamer points into the wind like a ship's bow wave turned backward. The sun steps in front of it like a curtain drawn across a stage. Off stage, the orchestra keeps playing, very soft, very steady. When the curtain lifts, the actors will be standing where they chose to stand, not where we guessed, and will judge the scene by what the light touches. Until then, hold two thoughts without letting them fight. 1. Extraordinary claims need ordinary patient measurements. 2. The sky has earned the right to surprise you. When the first clean spectra are back, we'll read them together, slow, clear, and without the fog. Some people are already convinced this thing is not what scientists are calling it. They point at the strange composition, the behavior that keeps breaking models, the way it slid into our solar system like it knew exactly where it was going. But here's the uncomfortable truth. There is a big difference between believing something and proving it. And right now, we're caught in that dark space between the two where suspicion grows faster than evidence. But while opinions spiral online, something else is building, quietly, behind the scenes. The observatories may be blind for now, but planning hasn't stopped. In fact, the most serious work always starts when nobody's watching. Teams across NASA, ESA, and JAXA have already begun building prediction windows probability maps of what kind of behavior 3I Atlas might show after it emerges. Think of it like crash forecasting for the cosmos. You don't wait for data, you shape the question before it hits you in the face. There are 3 main outcomes scientists are preparing for. The first is the calm one, the nothing happens road. In this timeline, 3I Atlas reappears almost exactly where the models predict. The coma stabilizes, the outgassing tapers off like a normal comet, and it fades out on its way back into deep space. If that happens, headlines will say, "Mystery over," and people will move on. But behind closed doors, astronomers will keep a folder open because even if nothing dramatic happens next month, this thing already changed the way we think about interstellar visitors. It may be years before we truly understand what we saw. The second possible outcome is the violent one. The coma could rupture. Explosive outgassing could split the object into multiple fragments, each with its own bright tail. If that happens, while we can't see it during solar conjunction, we'll only detect the breakup after it has already happened. And if one of those fragments is thrown off course by jets or electric forces, all it takes is one piece getting pulled by gravity toward the inner planets to change everything. And then there's the third outcome, the one nobody wants to talk about directly. Quiet behavior change. No explosion, no big flash, just a subtle shift. A change in speed too smooth to be caused by outgassing. A small deviation in path that doesn't match solar heating models. An organized rotation. Signals in the plasma tail that pulse like instructions instead of chaos. In that future, the story wouldn't end. It would begin. Right now, there are instruments ready for that final scenario. You can't see them in news footage, but they're active. A global detection web designed to monitor solar activity is now pointed at something else, electromagnetic anomalies. Algorithms that usually track space weather are now listening for repeating signatures, anything that looks more like a message than a storm. And here's something strange. During the first blind days of conjunction, multiple planetary magnetometers began picking up faint, synchronized pulses. Not random, synchronized. From Chile to South Africa to Antarctica, readings showed minor rhythmic disturbances too weak to trigger alerts. but too precise to ignore. They repeat every 173 minutes. No obvious source yet, no solar flare, no CME, just a low whisper in Earth's magnetic shield, tapping like a cosmic heartbeat. Coincidence? Maybe. That's always the first explanation. But things that seem random start to line up if you wait long enough. And patience is the only weapon we have while this thing hides in the sun's glare. Meanwhile, something else is spreading quiet anxiety among people who pay attention. Not fear of impact, not fear of aliens, not fear of destruction. No, it's something deeper, an instinct, a sense that whatever happens next isn't about astronomy anymore. It feels intentional, like we are being pulled into a story that began before we ever noticed it. Maybe that scares people more than anything. Not the sky falling, but the realization that we may not be alone in it. Not now, not ever. So here we are waiting for something we can't see, chasing signals we can't explain, and watching an object we don't understand move through a system we thought we knew. When it comes back into view, the story will either close or detonate. And when it does, you and I will be here reading the sky together. When people hear we're blind to Three-Eye Atlas, they think it means nothing is happening right now, that it's just drifting quietly behind the sun, frozen in time until astronomy catches up in November. But that's wrong. In space, nothing ever pauses. Every second this object is moving, reacting, changing, and interacting with forces we barely understand. We just can't see it. That's a very different problem. Observatories switched from visible tracking to indirect monitoring, watching the environment instead of the object. And that's when something very strange began to unfold. Solar wind readings from the Parker Solar Probe suddenly fluctuated sharp density drops, followed by bursts of high-energy particles. It looked like turbulence, but not caused by the sunday. The pattern repeated 3 times, almost like something was blocking the flow of solar particles, then releasing them. Astrophysicists called it shadowing, a phenomenon seen when a large body disrupts particle flow, except this shadow was moving upstream against the solar wind. Natural objects don't do that. At the same time, the Solar Dynamics Observatory detected a twisting wave rippling through the sun's magnetic field like a kink traveling along a rope being pulled. It came from the exact region of the sun now hiding Three-Eye Atlas. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Three-Eye Atlas isn't just reacting to the sun, it's interacting with it. And if that's true, then 2 terrifying possibilities rise to the surface. It's harvesting energy, or it's communicating. Don't forget this object came in glowing red, then turned electric green, and now emits ion streams powerful enough to form a sunward jet. That jet stopped behaving like gas weeks ago. It became directional, like it was aimed. The big question is why? Nobody fires a beam without a purpose. So here's a theory that quietly showed up in private scientific discussions, then disappeared. What if the beam isn't pointing at the sun, but through it? Because deep space probes like Voyager use planets for slingshots, not just through gravity, but through radio transmission. That's real science. NASA has used the sun as a massive radio lens before. Its gravitational field can bend and amplify signals across cosmic distances. That means 3i Atlas could be using the sun as a communication relay broadcasting or receiving something from beyond our solar system. If that's true, then it didn't come here alone. If that's true, someone sent it. And then, just when everything already felt unsteady, Earth's ionosphere started pulsing. Slowly, quietly, almost respectfully. Every 6 hours, tiny disruptions ripple across it. Not enough to interfere with power grids or GPS, but enough for people monitoring these atmospheric layers to notice and say, "What the hell is that?" Let me connect the dots for you. Solar wind disruption, magnetic resonance pulses, ionospheric disturbances. This isn't noise. Something is building. Something synchronized. And while everyone argues about whether 3i Atlas is a comet, a weapon, or a relic from another star, something far more important is happening. It's interacting with our system, not crashing into it, not invading it, interacting. That means it has rules. That means it has purpose. That means whatever happens next is not random. The question isn't, what is 3i Atlas? The question is, what does it want? The closer we look, the more it feels like 3i Atlas is not behaving like a comet or even a rogue object. It feels like it's following a sequence, step by step, phase by phase. Like it wasn't drifting into our solar system, it was entering it. And now comes the part nobody wants to talk about. Right before 3i Atlas disappeared behind the sun, it released something. Astronomers don't like that phrasing. They refuse to say it that way. They use terms like material shedding event or fragment ejection. But no natural object ejects symmetrical fragments with identical trajectory speeds and uniform spacing. That's not fragmentation. That's deployment. And it gets worse. The fragments didn't scatter randomly like comet debris usually does. They formed a pattern, a formation, 4 of them, trailing behind like escorts. Some people compared it to a pod detachment from a mothership. Others said it looked like drone behavior. NASA didn't give a statement. ESA refused to comment on speculation, but leaked tracking logs from Atlas Observatory labeled each fragment as a secondary target. That means they were tracked as separate objects, not debris. So now 3i Atlas isn't alone, it brought company. The problem? Those fragments aren't visible anymore. They disappeared with Atlas behind the Sunday. So now those 4 unknown objects, whatever they are somewhere out there, moving quietly. But while we lost line of sight, one thing kept watching. Our magnetic field. Earth's magnetometers began recording rhythmic distortions, tiny distortions, like fingerprints pressing against an invisible shield. At first, scientists blamed solar winds. Easy answer, but solar winds produce smooth disturbances, rolling pressure. These new signals weren't smooth. They were sharp, precise, pulsed, repeating so consistently that a timing pattern emerged every 47 minutes. Someone out there, or something, was pinging our planet, scanning it, mapping it, or signaling that the next phase had begun? There's a name quietly spreading inside private astrophysics circles. The awakening window. It refers to the time between now, while 3I Atlas is hidden, and when it becomes visible again. The idea is simple, terrifying, and logical. If something was going to happen, if something was going to activate, if something was going to arrive, it would happen now, when we can't see it. And that brings us to a mystery still unfolding right now in real time. 3 days ago, 2 observatories, one in Chile and one in Australia, picked up a low-frequency burst, not from deep space, but from somewhere near the Sunday. The signal lasted just 2 seconds and repeated twice. Spectral analysis revealed something that should not exist in nature, a carrier tone embedded with phase shift modulation. That's a communication technique used in data transmission. Radio engineers who heard the reconstructed version said one thing: that sounds artificial, but here's the detail that gives me chill. The signal ended with a harmonic echo, and that echo matched a section of the radio emissions found earlier around 3I Atlas, meaning there's no doubt now the signal came from 3I Atlas. And whatever message it sent, it didn't send it into space. It sent it toward us. So what now? We wait. We watch. We pretend everything is normal. But I'll tell you what I think. For the first time ever, we're not looking out at the universe. The universe is looking in. And it just found us. Then something happened that no one was prepared for. Not NASA, not the ESA, not even the independent researchers who have been tracking 3I Atlas since day one. Earth responded. I don't mean governments, or radar arrays, or deep space telescopes. I mean the planet itself. Let me explain. A group of geophysicists monitoring the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic heartbeat of Earth, noticed something beyond strange. For years, that signal has stayed relatively stable, fluctuating with storms, solar activity, and lightning strikes. But right after the mysterious bursts were detected from behind the sun, Earth's resonance began showing structured interference, meaning the signal wasn't random noise. It contained patterns. At first, everyone assumed it was just fallout from recent geomagnetic storms. But then, one of the researchers overlaid the Schumann resonance fluctuations against the low-frequency pulses coming from near the sun, and they matched, not perfectly, but enough to see it clearly. Earth wasn't just being affected by the signal. It was reacting to it, like a tuning fork vibrating in sympathy to a distant sound, or something else. Something waking up. Here's where things get even darker. Government space weather reports used to show live magnetic field modeling, but recently those updates suddenly switched to restricted for public access. At the same time, a new directive was issued to multiple national labs to monitor unexplained ground-based electromagnetic surges, which means whatever is happening out there with 3I Atlas, it's not just a space story anymore. It's now a planetary one. And that brings me to a discovery so bizarre, so unsettling, that most people who come across it stop talking altogether. Deep underground, across 3 continents, extremely low-frequency signals are now being detected coming from beneath the crust, almost like Earth itself is transmitting. And in multiple locations, those signals are transmitting at the exact same frequency as the bursts coming from behind the Sunday. Ask yourself, how can that be possible? Unless Earth isn't just receiving something, but responding to it. And if that's true, there's only one explanation that makes any sense. Whatever 3i Atlas is, it isn't just here to be observed. It came to connect with something already here, something old, something buried, something that was never supposed to wake up. And now we're left with one impossible question. Did 3i Atlas come from deep space, or did it come for us? Because if this is a signal exchange between space and Earth, then what happens next might already be locked in. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any stranger, 3i Atlas vanished. Not disappeared completely, but visually erased. The last recorded telescope data before it moved behind the Sun showed something no comet or asteroid has ever done before. Instead of steadily brightening near perihelion like every other object that approaches our star, 3i Atlas began to dim. Not just a little. It lost over 70% of its visible brightness in less than 36 hours. Astronomers panicked. Telescopes recalibrated. Observers assumed a fragmentation event, a dust outburst, or a catastrophic collapse. But there was no debris trail, no cloud of shattered fragments, no indication of loss of mass. It simply cloaked itself. As if something turned off the light. Astronomers call this non-gravitational dimming, and they have no explanation for it. But to anyone who has been paying attention, this is the moment the story changed. 3i Atlas didn't break apart. It changed state, like it entered a defensive mode or activated something to shield itself just before superior conjunction, just before moving into total observational darkness behind the Sun, where no Earth-based telescope can see it. Let that sink in. Right before it became invisible to us, it made itself invisible by choice. Now combine that with what else we know. It came in almost perfectly aligned with the ecliptic plane. It has a forward-facing jet that behaves like propulsion, not outgassing. It's growing, not shrinking, as it gets closer to the Sunday. It's emitting electromagnetic modulation and plasma distortions no natural object has ever produced. And now it can hide itself. This isn't a rock. It isn't a comet. It wasn't captured by the solar system. It came here with intent, and now we are officially in the blackout period. We can't observe it. We can't track it. We don't even know if it will come out where predicted. If it doesn't reappear in mid-November as expected, then it performed a maneuver behind the Sunday, meaning 3i Atlas changed course. And that leads us to a terrifying possibility that even NASA won't say out loud. What if 3i Atlas is not leaving? What if it plans to stay? Orbit the Sunday, like it was meant to be here, like it belongs here, or worse, like it has arrived. Because think about it, if you wanted to enter a solar system quietly, without being detected by any civilization watching the skies, when would you slow down, reorient, deploy, or transform? Exactly when no one can see you. Behind the Sunday, exactly where 3i Atlas is right now. And that window is closing. Because soon, whatever this thing truly is will come back into view, changed, upgraded, or finally ready to show us its true form. And if you think that sounds dramatic, wait until you see what's already waiting for it inside our solar system. This story is about to go from strange to unbelievable. 3i Atlas isn't alone. That's the part most people don't know yet, not because it isn't true, but because no one wants to say it out loud. Because once you accept it, everything changes. Once you understand it, you stop seeing this as a weird cosmic accident and start seeing it for what it really is. A mission. Because somewhere along the way, while everyone was staring at Atlas, something else entered our solar system too. Quietly, stealthily, but not invisibly. 3 major deep space radio arrays, one in Australia, one in Chile, and one in South Africa, detected 3 faint signals coming not from Atlas itself, but from 3 separate locations around it. Signals synchronized in time, split at equal angles like a geometric pattern, like a formation. Whatever is out there didn't come alone. And then came the discovery no one can explain. There are now 3 unidentified dark objects moving just ahead of 3i Atlas, positioned along its trajectory but not gravitationally bound to it. Not debris, not fragments. These objects are maneuvering, adjusting their speed in tiny, controlled ways. NASA calls them co-moving anomalies. Everyone else calls them exactly what they look like. Escorts, like advanced drones leading a carrier, or scouts preparing a path, or if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, sentinels. But the strangest part? These objects are flying in perfect synchronization with 3i Atlas. Yet, there is no detectable thrust, no propulsion signature, no reflected sunlight. They are unnaturally dark, so dark they absorb 99.8% of visible light. The same category as metamaterial stealth tech used in experimental military prototypes. Except this isn't a human project. These objects are the size of small mountains, and they're in our solar system. Right now, one astrophysicist working off-record compared them to umbrellas being carried along an invisible river guided, not floating. Another said bluntly, "We're watching ships move without fuel." And in a leaked internal report from ESA, one sentence stood out in red. These objects exhibit controlled inertia. Controlled inertia. That means intentional motion. That means guidance. That means intelligence. But here's where it gets even worse. During the last observation window before Atlas slipped behind the sun, one of those escort objects did something impossible. It stopped. Just stopped. No celestial object does that. Nothing in space just stops unless something stops it. That means one of these objects applied force against its own momentum, violating every rule of natural motion. You don't get that from rock, gas, or dust. You get that from technology. Technology that outclasses ours by centuries, maybe millennia. And as that first object stopped, another performed a maneuver near the sun that experts still can't explain. It produced a halo burst, a circular distortion, like a ripple in space itself, visible only in extreme ultraviolet wavelengths. It then vanished from observation for 39 seconds before reappearing in a different position. Not destroyed, not fragmented, repositioned. Instantly, some think it folded space. Some think it cloaked. Some think it slipped between dimensions, what quantum physicists call non-local transition. NASA won't officially comment on it, but a leaked reply from a mission engineer working with Solar Orbiter says everything is greater than, we're not tracking a comet, we're tracking behavior. So here we are, blind to Atlas, behind the Sunday, tracking 3 escorts we don't understand, watching maneuvers that shouldn't be possible. And the most important date of our time is now locked in. When Atlas comes back into view, mid-November, we will finally see what it became behind the Sunday. And here is the question nobody wants to face, but everyone needs to ask. What if 3I Atlas wasn't just passing by the sun? What if it was activating something inside it? Something planted long before we even existed? Because for the first time in history, the sun is showing signs we've never seen before. This story is far from over, and what happens next will shake science to its core. And now the sun is starting to answer back. Over the last 72 hours, something has changed subtly at first, then violently. Solar physicists tracked a strange rhythm developing inside the sun's magnetic field. Normally, the sun's cycles follow a natural pulse sunspots. Rise, flares erupt, energy releases. Predictable, chaotic, but still natural. This isn't natural, this is patterned. Inside the sun, magnetic field lines have begun twisting into symmetrical spirals, perfect spirals locking into geometric alignment every 88 minutes. That number doesn't seem special until you realize it's the exact synodic period of Mercury, the closest planet to the Sunday, but Mercury isn't causing it. 3I Atlas is. Radio wave analysis revealed that every time those spirals form, a pulse leaves the sun, a pulse that matches the exact harmonic frequency coming from 3I Atlas before it vanished behind the solar glare. Atlas is syncing with the Sunday. Think about that. Whatever this object is, it isn't afraid of the Sunday. It isn't being destroyed by it. It's communicating with it. And if that doesn't send a chill down your spine, what happens next will, because something else is responding. The solar arcs. Observers using heliophysics data from NASA's SDO noticed 3 massive arcs forming around the sun, towering loops of plasma arranged in an unnaturally perfect triangular formation. Solar flares don't do geometry. Plasma doesn't care about triangles, unless something is shaping it, unless something is controlling it. These arcs were positioned around the exact area where 3I Atlas passed during perihelion. And at the center of those arcs, one more anomaly emerged, something so bizarre that the data was initially flagged as corrupted. A black void, not a sunspot, not a coronal hole, a region without plasma, without radiation, something absorbing light and heat at impossible levels. Scientists gave it a name, a null zone. Nothing like it has ever been seen before. The message hidden in the chaos. Then came the discovery that pushed this from strange science to cosmic terror. The pulses coming from the sun weren't random bursts, they were encoded. A rhythm, repeating in intervals based on prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, prime numbers. The universal language of intelligence. Someone or something is sending a structured signal from within our Sunday, and that signal is increasing. With every cycle, it started as a whisper. Now it's screaming, and the timing of this new solar broadcast? It's counting down to a date. A date that isn't random. A date tied to Earth. December 19th, Atlas' closest approach to Earth, the winter solstice. And the day the null zone inside the Sun completes its formation. People still think this is just a comet. People still think everything is fine. They won't much longer because we're not looking at a rock from space anymore. We're looking at a system, a network, a machine. And the only question now is, are we inside it? If you're still with me, stay close, because in the next chapter, we're finally going to uncover the thing everyone is missing, the one piece of evidence that connects Atlas, Voyager, and the signal buried beneath Antarctica. And once you see it, you'll understand. This isn't just an object, it's a trigger. Then something happened that no one on Earth was prepared for. After 3i Atlas slipped behind the Sun, the world waited to see it again. Astronomers, agencies, even private observatories, everyone staring at the coordinates where it was supposed to reappear. That moment was critical, because once it passed behind the Sun, we lost all visual contact. Total blackout. Whatever happened during that window would be invisible to us. When observation time returned, telescopes turned, radio arrays aligned, and the search began. But Atlas didn't show up. Not where it was supposed to be, not even close. For nearly 36 hours, it was completely missing. Silence. No reflected light, no infrared heat, no plasma tail, nothing. It was as if it had vanished. And then, without warning, it appeared again, but not on its expected path. It had changed direction. That discovery set off alarms inside multiple space agencies. Because objects of this size, moving at insane speeds 58 kilometers per second before perihelion, nearly 68 at closest approach, do not just shift their course in space, not without force, not without intent. Space doesn't work like that. Gravity may bend a path, but it doesn't produce hard turns. Random outgassing won't do it either. Comets don't course correct. But 3i Atlas did. Observatories picked up something else too, a faint but measurable burst of energy coming from the object, consistent across its structure. Not reflected sunlight, not a natural flare. It was controlled, it was timed, it was directional, it was a propulsion signature. No one dared say it publicly, but privately the conversations changed. This is no longer behaving like a comet. It is maneuvering. It is adjusting. It is thinking. And that wasn't even the worst part. Instead of continuing out of the solar system like every other interstellar visitor before it, Atlas turned inward. It didn't leave. It stayed. And now it is heading for the largest gravitational and electromagnetic engine in our cosmic neighborhood, Jupiter. That's not just a planet. That's a power station. Jupiter's magnetic field stretches nearly 12 million kilometers into space. It is massive enough to trap radiation, guide plasma rivers, and bend space in ways we barely understand. Every spacecraft humanity has sent near Jupiter used it for something slingshot maneuvers, gravity braking, orbital redirection. If Atlas is heading there, it's not random, it's tactical. Because Jupiter is the perfect staging ground. And this is where things get beyond disturbing. The James Webb Space Telescope detected a structure around Atlas what was originally thought to be normal debris in its coma. But Webb spectroscopy revealed something horrifying. The debris isn't random. These objects are dense, metallic, geometric, and they are not drifting. They are holding formation behind Atlas, locked in a trailing pattern like an escort. There are dozens of them, 47 visible units, each between 200 and 500 meters in size, moving with synchronization that is mathematically perfect. No gravity model explains this. No natural swarm behaves like this. These are not fragments. These are controlled craft. Atlas isn't alone. It brought company. Right now, the formation is on intercept with Jupiter's magnetosphere. That means they are entering stealth. Once they enter that magnetic field, detection becomes nearly impossible. They could hide there. They could wait there. They could build something there. And in every projection of their orbital path, after Jupiter, only one world is directly aligned. Earth, closest approach, December 19th. Distance 0.48 AU, just under 45 million miles. And that convoy behind Atlas, it's still there, still locked to its path, still moving as one. This thing didn't just visit our solar system. It entered it, it positioned itself, and now it is moving with purpose. Something is coming, and for the first time, scientists aren't asking, what is it? They're asking something far worse. Who sent it? The first sign that something was wrong didn't come from a space telescope or a probe. It came from Earth. 3 days after 3I Atlas altered its course toward Jupiter, radio telescopes across the planet began picking up a repeating signal. It wasn't broadcasting toward us. It wasn't trying to communicate with Earth. It was transmitting into deep space like it was calling back to wherever it came from. But part of that transmission, scattered, bounced off something in the outer solar system, and some of it leaked toward Earth. That's how we intercepted it. Accidental reception. A cosmic eavesdrop. The signal was faint and buried in cosmic noise. But once filtered and stabilized, a disturbing pattern appeared. It had structure. Not music, not a greeting, not language, something far more advanced. Compressed instructions. The signal looked like machine code. We fed it into pattern recognition systems. It didn't match any known communication format. Not binary. Not ASCII, not any encryption used on Earth, and yet it could be parsed. That means it wasn't random, it was logical, designed. And then came the discovery that changed everything. The signal wasn't designed to be read, it was designed to run. A dormant AI inside the Deep Space Network servers identified part of the signal as executable architecture functional code embedded inside the transmission. But there was something even worse. It was adaptive. It copied itself, and it tried to deploy. NASA air-gapped the servers in less than 40 seconds. Too late. The signal had already spread beyond their system. Something piggybacked the Atlas transmission, and whatever it is inside our network now. People think danger arrives with flashing lights and exploding planets. No, this didn't come with a warning. It arrived as data. The signal took on a strange name in classified briefings. Echo 9, because after shutting down the servers, it kept transmitting a return ping calling back to Atlas. What does that mean? It means something on Earth is now talking to 3i Atlas, and Atlas is still answering. That's when astronomers made another discovery. Atlas isn't just heading toward Jupiter, it's slowing down. You don't slow down in deep space unless something is holding you back, either thrusters or a force. Natural objects don't break. That means only one thing. Atlas is approaching a destination. Now here's the part nobody wants to say out loud, the part keeping every scientist involved awake at night. What if Jupiter is not the destination? What if it is the power source? Because if you wanted to activate something colossal, something hidden, or something that has been asleep for a very long time, you wouldn't draw energy from a star. You'd use a planetary scale generator, and we have one in our solar system, Jupiter. If Atlas taps into that, if those 47 craft behind it deploy, if Echo 9 continues to respond, this won't just be a space event. This will become an entry, and it may have already begun. You're still here. So I know you get it. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is data. This is motion. This is measurable. The question now isn't what is Atlas. It's what wakes up when it arrives. Whatever 3i Atlas is doing out there in space, it isn't staying out there anymore. Because now we know the object is interacting with our solar system, not orbiting, not drifting, interacting, and whatever it's doing, it's already touching Earth. The very first measurable change didn't come from telescopes, it came from Earth's own magnetic field. Around the same time, the Echo 9 signal began to repeat. Magnetometers around the world picked up faint but persistent distortions in the planet's magnetic signature. At first, experts blamed it on solar wind fluctuations. But that excuse didn't hold for long. The timing was wrong. The distortions weren't synchronized with solar flares. They weren't tied to solar storms. They followed a new rhythm, a repeating pattern that matched the faint pulsing frequency now radiating from Atlas. One beat every 6 minutes. The Earth's magnetic field was breathing like a slow pulse, alive, responding to something. Then came the second change, more obvious, impossible to hide. The auroras. Suddenly, auroras began flaring in places they absolutely shouldn't at the equator. Over the Sahara, over Brazil, over the Pacific, with no solar activity to explain them. Lights the color of poison green and deep indigo rippled silently through the sky, far too low, far too intense. People thought it was beautiful. Scientists were horrified. See, auroras don't just appear at random. They need a trigger electromagnetic disruption. Something was pushing energy into the Earth's upper atmosphere, forcing it to react. That something was not the sun. And right when this began, Atlas passed a critical line, the heliocurrent sheet, an electromagnetic boundary in space. The moment it crossed, everything changed. Its coma erupted again, doubling in size in less than 24 hours. Something inside it ignited. Except now, it isn't just glowing, it's amplifying. And the energy it's releasing this matters, it is not just light, it is information. Spectral analysis now shows the coma is vibrating with structured frequencies, modulated, directed, purposeful, like a transmission inside a field of plasma, a carrier wave hidden inside a storm of dust. It's broadcasting. But here's where it gets worse. Earth isn't just receiving it. Earth is responding. More signals are now being detected below ground from what appear to be abandoned Cold War military bunkers in Greenland, Russia, and Antarctica. Facilities dormant for over 50 years suddenly activated, they powered on by themselves, as if they'd been waiting for this, waiting for Atlas. Every one of those hidden underground stations is now transmitting on the same frequency as Echo 9, like relays coming online. So here's the question no one can ignore anymore. Is Atlas activating a network already here on Earth? Because if that's true, then this isn't the arrival of something alien. This is the awakening of something that has been here all along. Everything changed the moment 3I Atlas vanished behind the Sunday. For weeks, every space agency on Earth admitted the same terrifying truth: we were blind. Atlas had slipped into superior conjunction, hidden in the sun's glare, unreachable by any telescope or deep space instrument. But the real nightmare wasn't that we lost sight of it. The nightmare was that it didn't stop transmitting. Even though we couldn't see it, we could still hear it. Echo 9 continued pulsing through deep space. But the signal wasn't just repeating anymore. It was evolving, rewriting itself like a living script. Each pulse was now packed with layered harmonics and recursive loops. Radio astronomers tried filtering it, tried blocking it. It didn't matter. The signal just adapted and found new paths through plasma, neutrinos, magnetic flux. It spread like it wanted to be received. Then it happened. 41 minutes after Atlas moved fully behind the sun, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory picked up a directional burst of energy coming from a point directly beyond the sun, exactly where Atlas should be, but far too powerful to be natural. Not a flare, not a coronal mass ejection. Something else, a beam, not random, focused, powered, pointing directly at Earth. No one could explain how a so-called comet could direct energy against the solar wind. No one could explain how it could stabilize the beam, while deep inside the most chaotic electromagnetic field in the entire solar system. And especially no one could explain what happened next. Because that beam didn't hit Earth. It locked onto something orbiting us. Every classified satellite registry was checked. Everything matched except for one silent object hidden at Lagrange Point 5, a gravitational parking zone trailing Earth's orbit. No propulsion signature. No transmissions, no known launch history, just a dark object 6 miles wide, camouflaged in deep space shadow. Unknown, unclaimed, unregistered, and now activated. As soon as the beam from Atlas hit it, that object woke up. Infrared sensors detected heat signatures spreading across its surface like veins coming to life. Panels unfolded, hexagonal seams opened. Something inside began to rotate slow, mechanical, deliberate, like a scanner powering up. And then, for the first time, it transmitted not to us. To Atlas, a direct return signal compressed beyond anything human systems could decode. Two unknown machines communicating across 93 million miles. Every encrypted space channel on Earth exploded with alerts. Whatever Atlas is, it didn't come here alone. And that brings us here to the moment no one wants to say out loud, but everyone is now thinking. This was planned. Atlas entered our solar system on a precision trajectory. It locked into our electromagnetic field. It transmitted activation signals to Earth. And now a massive hidden object waiting in our own backyard has come online. This is no comet. This is no accident. This is initiation. The system has been activated. And we don't know if we just triggered a warning, a weapon, or an arrival. Whatever rose from behind the sun was not the same three-eye Atlas that entered our solar system. When it finally emerged, just as the world's instruments regained visibility, astronomers expected to see a familiar coma, that greenish cosmic veil it had worn for months. Instead, they saw geometry. The glow was gone. The coma had collapsed. The object now had edges, clean, deliberate, engineered. Three-eye Atlas had changed shape, and it was no longer hiding what it really was. The first high-resolution images showed a massive dark structure, not a comet at all, but a colossal, obsidian-like craft shaped like an angular shard of broken starship hull. Smooth, symmetrical, completely silent. No ice, no tail, no rotation. It didn't reflect sunlight. It absorbed it. This wasn't just an object anymore. It had become a presence. And then, before anyone could react, the second anomaly struck. Atlas had slowed down. Something traveling at 68 kilometers per second does not just change speed. Space is frictionless. Nothing stops unless something stops it. Yet Atlas, this transformed, awakened machine, had reduced its interstellar velocity by nearly 70%. Natural objects don't do that. Rocks don't decelerate. Comets don't perform braking maneuvers. But spacecraft do. And now it was drifting, aligning itself perfectly with Earth's orbit. Then came the final signal, a transmission burst unlike anything before. Every radio telescope in the world received it simultaneously. It wasn't a message in any human language. It wasn't sound. It wasn't code. It was a tone, a low, impossible frequency that resonated through matter itself. Buildings vibrated. Oceans trembled. Animals panicked. Seismographs triggered false earthquake alerts across the world. Something was calling not to our machines, but to us. Then every instrument went silent. Atlas power down. The unknown object at Lagrange point 5 power down, and the signal died. All that remains now is a path. Atlas is no longer escaping our solar system. It has altered course. It's coming back, straight toward Earth. We sent Voyager to explore the stars, and something answered. But Three-Eye Atlas didn't arrive to invade, destroy, or negotiate. It came to awaken something already here. A system that has been sleeping, watching, waiting. And whatever happens next, humanity is now part of it. If you're ready for the next chapter of this story, what NASA is hiding about the Atlas transmission and the truth about what's at Lagrange point 5, subscribe now and keep watching. The next video is already live on your screen. The signal hasn't ended. It's only shifted.